environment. Next slide, please. So what are the challenges again? Whether you are a small business like a doctor's office or you are a large enterprises, more and more organizations are dependent on their IT resources. And the fact that they are down is totally unacceptable. And here there are some examples. The issue with examples is that, in the past, the challenges is that when you talk with the specific customers, they might have a different numbers or different criteria in mind. But overall, these are kind of a benchmark that even if a short period of downtime is going to cost the businesses a lot and is less than about the actual amount of dollars that you lose. There are other challenges that you will see in the next few slides, such as customer experience, such as loss of revenue, such as loss of customers moving to another site, for example. So net is that the cost of network or system downtime is very high. And it's not just the monetary cost, as we see some examples here, but there are other costs to the business. So the more you need to do is to make sure that you always have a very robust disaster recovery system in place. Next slide, please. Oh, I guess you went too far. One. Okay. And then, so we established in the past couple of slides that what are the challenges and why do you need to have a robust disaster recovery system in place. But why the systems fail? So one research we have conducted, it shows that close to 80% of them are human related. In many cases, as I said, having the right IT talent is becoming a challenge. Whether the employees by mistakes or the IT that you have by mistake do something that caused the failure of the system. But that is, human failure is the largest part of the reason that systems fail. You also have the hardware, which is known, even though you build redundancy, but still that is a factor. Then you have the natural disaster. Actually, this was a case a couple of years ago, as some of you might recall. There was a big hurricane in southern part of the U.S., and many organizations actually find out that they don't have the right disaster recovery in place, and that was a kind of a rude awakening to those people. So natural disaster, floods, earthquake, hurricanes, tornadoes, all are also as part of it. But the other one, which is more and more is becoming a threat to organizations, is the ransom and viruses and worm and Trojans, particularly ransom. We are seeing that is becoming more and more a way for a lot of criminal organizations to actually make money. And one area that they target heavily is this small and medium businesses, because they don't have some of the very elaborate or complex security processes in place. So these are some of the reasons that sometimes systems are failed. Next slide, please. Now, as we quickly touch that, it's not just the financial loss, which is the key thing, by the way, as you see in the middle of it, but there are other costs to the businesses if their systems are down, whether it's the sales transaction that they lose, whether the employee productivity, damage to the company reputation. I had conversation with many IT organizations that their concern is they're in retail, that during the holiday season, if their system is down even for a few minutes, what they lose is just unacceptable. So the company's reputation is a key, and that's becoming even more and more, in many cases, simply than the dollar amount that they lose. And the production, if you're running massive production lines and those lines come to a halt, that is totally unacceptable, not from the financial, but also you need to go back and restart the assembly line, for example. That is a very costly and labor-intensive process to do. So these are some of the reasons that it is prudent for any organization, regardless of the size, to make sure that they have a very robust and effective disaster recovery processes in place. So I think now I pass the presentation to Chris. Chris is going to take you to some of the key offering and feature functionality of the Veritas System Recovery 18. Thank you.
Thanks, Ali. Hi, everybody. Yeah, so I'm just going to talk through a few slides giving you an overview of the product, some of the key features, what the product's capable of, and then I'll show you a short demo, and obviously any questions, please save them for the Q&A session at the end of today's call. Okay, so first of all, system recovery. So just picking out some of the key features here. So for me, the main feature of this product is the simplicity and the speed in which you can recover an entire system in the event of a disaster, whatever that disaster may be, whether that be a ransomware attack or a hardware failure or fire or flood. Okay, it's very simple to restore an entire machine, and the demo we'll see today will demonstrate that. Okay, so it has the ability to restore to the same hardware or to different hardware. It has physical to virtual and virtual to physical conversion capabilities, which helps with hardware migrations to virtual environments and vice versa, depending on your requirements. It's a very easy to use product, has a very user-friendly interface. It also has the ability to now back up directly to cloud, so that's one of the new features with version 18. We can back up directly to both Amazon S3 and Azure storage. And we can also back up to basically any disk-based device, be that USB, NAS device, or local disk. And I think Varun touched on this earlier. It is a mature product with around 20 years of research and development. Okay, so why System Recovery 18? So as I said, it's a very powerful and simple to use product. It allows for quick recovery of partial or entire machines in the event of disaster. It's proven, it's trusted, and it is reliable. So just to talk through the process. So backup, we have various options for backups. The default option would be to protect an entire machine. So let's say we have a Windows 2016 server with CD&E partitions. We can choose to back up that entire machine, and that would back up to what we call a recovery point, so or an image file, as some people refer to it. So that goes to V2I file format, to a disk, or to cloud storage. Okay, the backups can be done via a hot method or a cold method. So via a hot method, we mean with the operating system running, and via the cold method, that's when the operating system is shut down. So you may be in a situation where something has corrupted the operating system, maybe a virus attack or even a Windows update, and the OS no longer boots. So we do have the ability to boot from the recovery disk in that scenario, boot directly into the recovery environment and actually run a cold backup at that point. So we are still able to protect our data even though we can't boot into the installed operating system. Quite a nice feature. And as I mentioned earlier, restores can be back to the same hardware, they can be to different hardware, or they can be to virtual format. Okay, so we can restore directly into virtual machine or to a VMDK or VHD file. Offsite protection. So we have a feature in the product called Offsite Copy. That basically allows us to automatically duplicate our recovery points to a secondary storage device or even a secondary location. So we can duplicate that to any disk-based device, any FTP server, or even cloud storage. So that gives us extra resiliency should something happen to our primary site. So we also have a feature built into the core product called Lights Out Restore. So this is quite a nice feature particularly for distributed environments. So we may have one administrator that's responsible for the entire organization. We might have 3 or 4 different physical locations. So we could say we have an administrator in our New York office, for example, and he's responsible for backup and recovery of multiple sites, maybe Boston, Los Angeles, and so on. With the Lights Out Restore feature, he has the ability to remotely restore machines that are based in other locations he doesn't have to physically visit those locations. How that works is the recovery environment gets installed onto a partition on the disk. Should something happen to that machine, we can remotely boot that machine up into the recovery environment and perform a restore as if we were physically sat at that machine. Very powerful feature. So touched on physical conversion. So again, we have 2 methods that allows us to reduce downtime. It allows us to do hardware migrations if we are moving from legacy hardware into fully virtualized environments. So we have the ability to convert our V2I recovery points to virtual format. So be it VMDK format for VMware ESX hosts, or we can convert directly to VHD or VHDX or Microsoft Hyper-V hosts. So that's a seamless process and gives us the ability to move to a virtual environment, perhaps for migration, maybe even for testing purposes, where we can take a production server, put it into a virtual machine, do whatever testing we need. Maybe it's an upgrade to a new application or installing certain patches, so we can do that testing in a virtual environment away from our production environment. We also have the ability to perform granular level restores. So by default, we back up a whole partition and a whole machine. And in DR situations, generally speaking, we'll recover either an entire machine or an entire volume perhaps. But we also have the ability to mount those recovery points and drill in at a granular level to recover specific pieces of data, whether that's individual files, individual folders, or even exchange-related information. So if we've got an exchange server that we want to protect, we can actually drill in and restore granularly mailboxes, emails, etc. Very easy and very quick. Okay, so again, built into the product, we have the storage saving costs. So we have what we call smart sector technology. So by default, when we do a volume level backup, we're only backing up what's needed. So we're basically backing up the used sectors on that hard disk. So we ignore any unused sectors. That ensures that we reduce storage costs. We also speed up the backup window. And likewise, we have compression built into the product, which again reduces our storage costs, which particularly when we're using cloud storage is an important factor, and we are also reducing our network bandwidth. So I touched on this a couple of times with hardware migrations. So the main feature of the product, the kind of the heart of the product, if you like, is the Restore Anywhere feature. So that gives us the ability to move from one type of hardware to a different piece of hardware. So we may have a host server running Dell PowerEdge, for example, maybe legacy, no longer supported, may have some hardware issues. We might want to move that to perhaps HP ProLine piece of hardware. So with the Restore Anywhere feature that's built into the product, when we run a restore, all we have to do is tick that box, and the software will automate that process. It will install the relevant drivers to allow the installed operating system to work with that new hardware. As it says here, the recovery disk comes pre-populated with a large driver database for some of the most common drivers that are needed in order to boot that operating system on the new hardware. What we also have is the ability, when creating our recovery disk, is to add additional drivers that may not be included on the driver database, perhaps for particularly new hardware that's only been released in the last 6 to 12 months. So we can choose to add extra drivers. They'll be used throughout the restore process, and the recovery disk will install those drivers for us during the restore process. Very simple, very easy, very powerful. A quick customer quote there to just reiterate that point. So just to touch on some of the main new capabilities in version 18 of the product. So we have the ability now to do direct backup to both Azure and Amazon S3 storage. We can also do a duplicate copy, so offsite copy to cloud storage. We've added support for the latest operating systems. We've also added support for TLS and SSL for SMTP notification, something that a few customers have been asking for, so we've now added that support. We've added some enhanced centralized management capabilities. I'll talk about the centralized management tool in just a couple of minutes. And we've also replaced Symantec Live Update with Veritas Update to deliver patches and updates to the product. And again, just to reiterate, cloud is a big deal for Veritas these days, so system recovery is now aligned to that. As I said, bringing in support for Amazon and Azure, and I believe other cloud vendors we're going to be adding as we go along the ability to back up to other cloud storage as well in the future. Nothing extra to install, no additional licensing or cost involved to allow you to back up directly to cloud. Okay, and along those lines, system recovery is now on the Azul Marketplace. So go check it out. A 60-day trial is available, so we encourage you to go and play around with it. So that obviously is going to give you the benefit of protecting any virtual machines that you may have running in the Azul Marketplace. So the management solution, so I briefly touched on this a couple of slides ago. So this is really designed for our larger environments. It's typically aimed at environments that have 100 clients and upwards. It allows for scalable, centralized, policy-based management to ease the cost of administration for organizations. So it allows you to deploy system recovery to your endpoints, centralized management in terms of policies. You can monitor, you can run reports, you can roll out updates when service packs and new versions are released. And from one management server, we can support up to 20,000 system recovery clients. No additional license is needed for this, so you just purely need to have your clients licensed. The management console itself is free. Okay, and with version 18, we've added support for Semantic Management Platform 8.1, which is the basis of management solutions. We run on top of the semantic management platform. So as it says there, it's highly scalable, centralized management solution. So I believe that is my last slide. Yep, that's right. So what I'll do now is I'll share my screen and just run a very short product demo. Varun, I think you may need to make me presenter to allow me to share my screen. Can you do that for me? Okay, thank you. Okay, so I hope everyone can see my screen. Okay, so I'm just going to run a short video which will demonstrate a bare metal restore. So let me just pause it there for a second and just set the scene. So this is a kind of restore that would typically be performed in a disaster recovery scenario. So perhaps the source server, in this example it's a Windows 2012 R2 server, was in a non-bootable state. So perhaps hardware failure, ransomware attack, virus attack, something along those lines. We have our backup, and we then can take that backup. We can either restore back to the original server or to a different hardware or even into a virtual machine. So the first step is booting our recovery disk, which is what we're doing here. So we're booting into the Windows P-based environment. Okay, before we start the restore, what we're going to do is run the Microsoft disk part command. This is just to demonstrate what we have on this machine in terms of hard disks. So we've got a single disk of 60 gigabytes, and we are going to list the partitions just to show that it is a blank disk. Okay, so it's a kind of a fresh new machine that we're restoring to here. Okay. We're then going to start the restore wizard. Okay, now because this is a full system restore, we are going to choose the system option from the drop-down window. What this is going to allow us to do is to choose the system index file for restore. And let me just explain what that is. So on every volume level backup, we'll create a system index file which has a SV2I extension. And by selecting that for the restore means that by default, everything that we backed up will be restored. So all the partitions included in the backup will by default be restored. We do, however, have the ability to deselect volumes later on in the restore process. So we may only want to restore the operating system volume and worry about the data partitions later on. I just want to explain what we mean by the system index file. So here what we're doing is mapping a drive because my recovery points are stored on a network share. So before we can run the restore, we obviously need to map a drive to that location. Okay, drive is mapped. Let me pause it there, and I just want to highlight the open storage link there, just beneath the browse button. So that shows that we now have the ability with PSI Rating to run a full system restore directly from cloud storage, should we choose. For this example, I've obviously got my recovery point stored locally on a network share, but if our only copy is in the cloud, we can still run a restore directly from that location. Okay, so we'll now browse to the location where our recovery points are stored. So that's the SQL server that we're restoring. I select the system index file and then move to the next screen. So we have a blank disk, so we need to initialize the disk before we can actually restore to it. So we select OK, that just takes a few seconds. Okay, let me just pause the video there. So here we have kind of the nuts and bolts of what we're restoring. So this is the drive to recover screen. The top window is listing all the partitions that we have selected for restore and the target drive where they're going to be restored to. So in this example, I'm going to restore everything that I backed up, which is a typical scenario in a DR situation. We have a couple of other options here. We have verification options. If we're happy that our recovery points are valid, we don't need to run a verify, then we can switch that off and that will clearly speed up the restore process. The key feature is the restore anywhere option. So if we are restoring to different hardware, we must enable that feature. Generally speaking, other than enabling restore anywhere, most of the time we can leave the default options and just proceed to run the restore. Okay, and now we can start the restore process. Okay, as if by magic, we fast forwarded to the end of the restore, or almost to the end. And we can see there the restore is complete. And you can see there just 8 minutes it took to restore my server. Very quick and very simple. So just to demonstrate, we'll go back and run this part again. And we'll show the partitions that we now have on the disk. Okay, and there are our restored partitions. So we can now exit from this part and then exit from the recovery environment, which will prompt the machine to reboot. When it restarts, it will boot directly back into the restored operating system. Windows will then start its plug and play process, and then we're back into Windows. We can carry on with our lives. There we go. So that's that demonstrates a bare metal restore in just 4 and a bit minutes. Okay, so I think that's me done. Feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A section. But for now, I believe I'm passing the ball to Brian.
All right, good job there, Chris. So hopefully everybody's received a lot of information from Varun, from Ali, and Chris going through the demo here. So now what we're talking about is you understand how the product works, you understand the benefits that it could do, and now we have to understand how the licensing works and what we do with the product, the different editions. So with System Recovery, we have a number of family editions that come into play. So as you can see here, we have the desktop edition. The desktop edition is based on a per server or either a physical or virtual server base that we have, and this is Windows based. And it does protect VMware, Hyper-V, and it gives you full granular restore of these systems, and as he's shown, it can do it in just a minute. Okay. We also have the Small Business Server Edition for those folks still running Small Business Server Edition. It does the same functionality and capabilities based on the server edition, based on the desktop edition. Now the server edition, very similar to the desktop edition, per server, physical, virtual. The server doesn't really give you granular restore, but it does give you full server capabilities of image backups, image restores in this case. So that helps with the super fast restores and recoveries is just as Chris went through and showed there. And we also have the Linux edition. This supports all of the Linux servers, whether it's per server or it can be a physical or virtual server that comes into place that will do the complete backup, restore, image-based recovery for the Linux machines. And then we have the virtual edition, which is strictly for virtual servers and the configurations that you have. Okay, so we'll give you a broad range of licensing capabilities for the product on a per server base or per host base when it comes to the virtual edition. Actually, the virtual edition does protect all the VMs that are on that host, so I want to make sure that's clear as well. Okay. And then we look at going to the technical upgrade. So System Recovery 18, you can do a direct upgrade from the old Semantic System Recovery 2013, the R2 release, and the Veritas System Recovery 16 release. You can have direct upgrades from those versions. Any version prior to those, as you can see in the list here, you must uninstall the previous version and do a reinstall of System Recovery. All right. And when we look at the entitlements that we have for those current customers with maintenance right now, this is a free upgrade for them. Those that are not on maintenance, they have to renew in order to get this version in order to be able to do an upgrade. How to buy and how to renew. For the partners on the call, definitely talk to your preferred, Veritas reseller for folks on the call. Also, we want to do the Contact Us link that we have out on the Veritas.com site that's under the System Recovery link here, so you can definitely do a Contact Us in order to get in contact with whoever you need in order to make this purchase. And then a couple quotes here. A quote here: with System Recovery, recovering a server is a slam dunk. Uh-oh, just lost my, there we go. Recovering a server is a slam dunk. Before, recovery took us as many as 8 hours. Now you can recover a server in as little as 30 minutes. We're talking full server recovery here. So I think that's a real good thing that we could do with System Recovery. And then let's talk about the quick takeaways from everything that we talked about today. You think about the dramatically minimizing your downtime. Ali gave you some examples of doctors' offices, IT groups, on how much it's costing them when their servers are down. So let's minimize that downtime by doing complete restores of systems in this case. Being able to meet strict recovery time objectives, again, saving money. You want something automated, you want something quick and simple. This shows it in 4 simple steps that you can get all your data back. We also want to recover what you need, when and where you need it. So we do have the granularity of doing individual files, as well as emails when you're supporting and backing up Exchange resources. You can eliminate the need to have duplicate hardware on standby. So we have the great being able to do bare metal restores. It doesn't matter what type of hardware you have. Those images that we're backing up can be restored to dissimilar hardware, what makes it easier to, even if you have to plan for your DR, sometimes those plans don't come into play and you have to use whatever hardware that you have in place, and this allows you to do that. Easily perform the hardware refreshes and migrations. As soon as you want to change to new hardware, just as mentioned in recovery, this makes it very easy. And it also helps simplify IT administration, being able to have the centrally managed solution where you can manage all your backup servers and the recovery tasks all in one console. That's included at no extra charge. So I think that's pretty awesome on what the product can do with these takeaways. So for more information, definitely visit the System Recovery webpage that we have. This presentation should be sent out, will be sent out to everyone. You can take the 60-day trial. You can also deploy System Recovery in the Azure Marketplace. Chris showed a screenshot of that, how it looks there. You can always connect with us via Twitter, via LinkedIn, via Facebook. We're definitely there to communicate and give you more information on all of the Veritas solutions, not just System Recovery as it comes into play here. So if you want a little bit more visuals on how system recovery is working, here's where you can start. You can go subscribe to the YouTube playlist that we have here. It talks about how to perform a bare metal restore. Okay, that's one. How to back up to Amazon S3 and how to back up to Azure using System Recovery 18. So we cover you as far as doing a full metal restore and also backing up to the most the prominent cloud sources, AWS and Azure here. So now, come to the conclusion, and now it's your time to express any questions that you may have, any statements or anything that you want to talk about when it comes to system recovery. Everyone was muted once they joined the webcast, so if you take yourself off mute, you can ask your question to the panel and we'll answer what you have, or you can continue putting your questions in the Q&A section and we'll answer them there aloud. You don't have to be shy. Okay, so we have a few of the questions that are coming in the Q&A panel, so let me pull those up. Let me see here. Okay, so one of the questions, let me hit the licensing questions. It says, did not understand about licenses. We have contracts with Veritas with updates today with 16.2. What about? So that's Veritas 16 version that you're referencing as being able, you have entitlements with Veritas 16. If you have contracts with that version, you're entitled to this 18 release as an upgrade with no charge. It's included in your contract to be able to install the 18 version on top of the version that you're running right now. Okay? That was for Johannes. Hopefully I answered your question, sir. All right. Okay, that came twice. Let's look at, we did have a question that came in that asked about being able to restore images directly into AWS and Azure. System Recovery can do that to a VM that's already existing. It will not create an instance and do the restore. So running System Recovery in Azure or on-prem, as long as you have a VM that's created in one of those cloud environments, we can restore directly to those VMs that's in the cloud, and you'll have your data up and running, because it does kind of the physical to virtual conversion and that aspect that it can restore to those VMs in the cloud. Okay. All right, we're going through.
Brian, I can see a comment there from Johannes about licenses for PSI Rating, and yes, I'm aware there are some issues with the licensing portal. That's being worked on actively by our IT team. I have asked for an update today, so I'm not quite sure what the latest is on that, but we are expecting that to be resolved fairly soon.
Good deal. I do see a question about deduplication with system recovery. So system recovery, because it's an image-based type of a backup, it does more of a compression as opposed to a deduplication. So there is no deduplication in system recovery because it's doing more of an image backups, but the compression and the way that we do the image backups does allow for saving you a lot of disk space. So one of the things that Chris mentioned is that if there's blank space on a VM or blank space, we don't back up the blank space for the servers per se. Okay. Okay, I see a question that says, hey, I have a customer running backup Exec and is interested in moving to system recovery. Is there a way to merge historic backups, BE catalogs in the database? So unfortunately, no. You will not be able to merge the data sets, the databases, and the catalogs, and the jobs, and the information from BE to system recovery. They do not integrate in that fashion. Okay.
There's another one there from Johan. I can see, sorry Brian to interrupt. So Johan is asking if we take a Windows 10 computer, there are several hidden drives for Windows Restore, I think. Should these be included in a backup schedule or not? Absolutely yes, they should. So these are critical partitions needed to boot the operating system. So when we run a backup or when we create a backup with system recovery, if we select the system partition, you'll be prompted to automatically include those critical related hidden partitions. You can deselect them, but it's strongly recommended that you include them in the backup. Otherwise, when it comes to restore time, you'll find that you'll be able to restore, but the machine won't boot. So the answer to your question is yes.
Cool, thanks there. I did have a question that I actually missed going through. What's the difference between the server edition and the virtual license edition? So the server editions per server, based on Windows servers, you can protect this granular store of full server configurations that you have. All right, so it looks as one server that you're protecting. When you look at the virtual license, it protects a full host. So that host can have multiple VMs on that host, and you're covered to protect all of those VMs on that host when you go with the virtual license edition. Okay? So both editions give you granular restore, and both editions give you protection of VMware and Hyper-V data is there. Okay.
I can see there's also a question from Andres. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. So he's asking about the management solution. Is it a separate solution or does it come with Veritas System Recovery? So it is a separate solution. It's a separate download and install, but it is free. So you can go to our trial website, you can download it, you can install it. It doesn't require any licenses. But it's there designed to manage your system recovery environment. And I'm actually currently working on a video that walks you through an installation, so that should be available on the same YouTube channel as the other videos within the next couple of weeks, hopefully.
So a real interesting question came through in regards to cloud has always been the main difference between BE and system recovery. Can you expand on how to position system recovery, I guess, as opposed to backup exec? Okay, so awesome question. And that's been coming up on trying to understand it. I'll give you some of my input, and then Chris, if you want to jump in, definitely you can add to that as well. So system recovery is more of an image-based full disaster recovery protection of a server. Okay, so if you're looking to do more full server backups, not necessarily so much focus on granular restores, with more capabilities of doing multiple file restores, different type of things what backup exec can do, system recovery can give you that full snapshot backup, pull it to dissimilar hardware, you move on. Okay, backup exec gives you more of the granularity when it comes to Exchange, SQL, SharePoint, Oracle, when you're talking about other type of resources that you want to give more granularity to do restores, that's where Backup Exec comes into play. Backup Exec also has more cloud capabilities as far as sending data to more cloud resources. So if you have a customer that's looking at private cloud as storage locations or want to run in private clouds, public and private clouds, or a mix, Backup Exec is the product for that. Okay. System Recovery only works running in Azure and AWS, so it's limited on the cloud solutions that it's working on, the platforms that it runs on. Chris, if you have any other thing to add to that, please do.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it, Brian. I think the key is system recovery is if you're interested in fully protecting a machine, whether that be a desktop or a server, and then recovering the entire machine quickly anywhere, then that's the product for you. As Brian says, BE gives you a lot more functionality and flexibility in terms of the granular level type of restores you can do. For me, that's the key difference between the two products.
Good deal, good deal. So another question comes in is, will our staff ever be able to make backups directly to Office 365? I'm going to say no to that question because I want to make sure that it's saying backup to Office 365 and not protecting. Both of those would be no. So we're not sending data to Office 365, and the configurations of setting up buckets or storage locations in the cloud, those will be separate from any integrated applications that are running in the cloud, such as Office 365 or any other product that's running there. Thank you. All right. And then we have a coexisting question. So can system recovery coexist on a server with Backup Exec and DLO? Awesome question. Chris?
Well, whether it can, I think there's two parts to this. Whether you can do it and whether you would recommend it, I think are two different things.
Right.
I think from a performance standpoint, it's probably not the best idea to have all three on the same machine. I certainly come across plenty of customers that have had both BE and system recovery on the same machine, and they can happily coexist. DLO adds another complexity because DLO has its own dedupe engine. Backup Exec also has dedupe. Those are not going to play nicely together, and it's probably not a good idea. But I think any two of the other combinations, so VSR and DLO, could probably quite happily coexist. The VSR and BE can, but put BE and DLO together, I'm not sure we would recommend that as a solution on the same machine.
I'm just reviewing back of the questions to make sure we didn't miss anything. If you think your question did not get answered, definitely put it back in the Q&A in the window, or just unmute and you can definitely ask across the lines.
I just see another question there from Ronald. So if I need a solution to back up only one folder, I should use BE. System recovery can only back up a full snapshot. Actually, system recovery does have a file and folder backup method, so you can create a backup to just back up one folder if you wish. It's not its primary purpose, as Brian mentioned. It's really its main function is to protect an entire machine or an entire volume, but it does have the ability to back up individual files and folders as well.
So there's a Citrix question. It says, we could restore, basically it's asking, can you restore the entire Zen server or only the virtual machine that has been protected through the Zen server? I'm going to hand that one to Chris.
Thanks, Brian. So Zen server, that's not a topic that comes up very often, I'll be honest with you. I would need to double check this, but I believe we only protect at the virtual machine level. I'm fairly sure of that.
Gotcha.
But we can take that one offline, whoever asked that, just to clarify. But my understanding is it's just the VM that we protect.
Me and you were on the same page. I wanted to confirm. I thought you. So, question about the management console. Chris mentioned that is a separate download piece that is included with the product, though. It's just a different download. And it can be deployed on, the question, I guess, different server OSs. So we're looking 2012 right now, 2008, I believe, a couple of versions, and Windows 16, Server 16 are the OSs, but we do have a software compatibility list that will give you specific OSs on what the server can actually install on.
Yeah, so I can clarify that. So if we're talking about the management solution server itself, so we are limited to what Symantec support because we use their semantic management platform. That's currently supported on Windows 2008 R2 and Windows 2012 R2. Windows Server 2016 is not supported at the moment for the management server. We can protect or manage Windows 2016 servers as a managed client, but it cannot be installed on the management server itself. So we are dependent on Symantec to add that support.
All right, so we have one other question that I think time-wise, we can answer. Ali is on the call, and the question is, well, the statement is, we love the software, thank you. Management of licenses can be difficult. So far for the versions of system recovery, is that something that we intend to improve as far as management of the licensing? So being able to make licenses a little bit simpler is something that comes into play a lot. I think this is something for us that we will be reviewing. I don't know immediately of anything that's changing to that. Ali, if you can step in and have a response to that, that'd be great.
Sure. So the short answer is yes. But the longer answer is that we are actually, this product is gaining more and more traction for us. So one of the things the team is doing here, we are kind of sitting back and putting together a short, medium, and a long-term strategy for the product. As part of that, and as you have seen our backup exec, that we are moving more and more towards simplification of the license, or what we call Be Easy. And this would be under that banner of Be Easy, in a sense that we do understand that we need to work on licensing, to simplification of licensing, and that's something that is part of our plan. But I don't have any immediate update like, in the next 3 months or 6 months, but definitely making it easier for users, partners, and everybody involved in terms of simplification of licenses is a major task for the team, not just for this product, but overall for everything we offer under the banner of Be Easy. I hope I answered the question.
Yep. Awesome. So as we come to the conclusion, some things to take action for today. First, thank you for all the questions that was there that have been asked. We will have this webcast as a recording, and a PowerPoint copy will be sent out to everyone. So some things to take action, learn more about System Recovery product. We'll have this link here. Try the System Recovery 18 trialware, and also launch it out in the Azure Marketplace. So you get used to the environment, see how it works in the cloud as well as on-prem. You can also join the Recovery Forum. This gives us the latest product news and updates for you. So if you want to stay informed with what's going on with System Recovery, definitely join the forum. That'll be the best way to go as far as staying updated. Okay. And as we continue out to lead out, we definitely thank you for your time. We thank you for your interest. We want people to enjoy and love System Recovery. And if you have any questions, you can definitely email any of the names that you have here, Varun, myself, or Chris, and we will definitely get you some answers as best as we can. So we thank you for your time. We thank you for your energy. And Veritas, the truth and information, is always there. So let's go out and get it.
I also want to thank you, everyone, for attending this. I appreciate your time and attention.